First of all, welcome to this webinar. We have actually had a whole bio of, a short bio of Cyril Lombard, but I just want to mention a few things. He has more than 30 years of experience in the biotrade, natural products, and small and medium-sized business development sectors. In 1999, he set up the Southern African Marula Oil Producers Network and facilitated the transfer of technology and know-how to community-based businesses in Botswana, Namibia, Eswatini, South Africa, and Zimbabwe. We actually have a few people from these different countries who also registered for today's webinar, which is also quite a good thing. Then they know a little bit more about SAAFoST as well. I also would like to just mention that during his many roles, including at Phytotrade Africa, he led the process to have baobab fruit gain international market access. I think it is quite important that we have these sort of webinars where we can actually showcase what is happening everywhere out there in our country and beyond our borders in Africa. And I want to thank Cyril very much for his inputs here, for his preparation, and for allowing us to be part of this whole webinar. And without further ado, I would like to hand over to you, Cyril, so that you can present your information to all of us. We look forward to it.
Thank you very much, Ingrid, and thank you, SAAFoST, for hosting this webinar. Can I just check that you can hear me?
We can hear you fine, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Right. Firstly, I'm just going to quickly go through some objectives here, and I hope the objectives are also interesting from the SAAFoST membership perspective. So I want to introduce our project with Marula to the SAAFoST membership. There's a lot going on, and there are a lot of overlaps and increasing overlaps between what we're doing with the commercialization of indigenous plant products and the food science and technology sector. So I think this is a connection that has been needed for a long time. So I'm very glad that Ingrid has grabbed this and has facilitated this so quickly. We want to also describe some of the opportunities and the challenges and the difficulties that there are with Marula, but that there are also some solutions and there are some examples by proxy of how to solve some of these problems and gain some of the possibilities. We would really like to attract the science and technology community to the cause of Marula fruit commercialization, because there's, the membership of SAAFoST represents an enormous resource to help us with all the challenges and the innovation that's needed, not only with Marula, but with many other indigenous plant products from Southern Africa. And hopefully we can also provide some inspiration to the businesses. I mean, we really, really need South African and regional and international businesses to take an interest in Marula and to use their capabilities in new product development to bring opportunities to the Marula sector. And of course, we're wanting to attract membership to the Marula Fruit Products Association. So thank you, Ingrid. You introduced me very nicely. I don't have to do that. The ABioSA project is a project that's funded by the Swiss government. It's managed by the GIZ agency, GIZ, the German agency. This is coming towards the end of a second phase, and there will be a third phase, which is under planning and preparation now. Supporting sectors has been a big part of the project focus, and they've supported the work with Marula, trying to get ready for an engagement with the European regulators and even the South African regulators to make the case that Marula fruit products are safe and good for consumers in South Africa, the region, and further afield. The project, ABioSA project, support to Marula has been focused on market access, I can tell you a little bit more about that work. I just want to also mention that, as I said earlier, Marula is one of many, many species. And we've seen over the years in South Africa and Southern Africa products like rooibos, honeybush, buchu, aloe and many, many others. Now, more recently, baobab gain market access and some traction, and they start leading to industries, job creation, etc. But one message that I would like to convey here is that the regulatory window in not only in South Africa, but especially in the export markets, and that's Europe, the United States, Asia, China, the doors are closing for new innovative products that are traditional foods or products from other countries, from countries that are third territories. And unless we have concerted programs to sort this out, we will not gain the opportunities that our biodiversity promises. Because the days of the slipping under the radar or getting past the regulators at certain cutoff dates is finished. And that's another big subject, and maybe one day we can have a discussion about these market access regulations. But the point here is that with Marula now, we've got a little bit of momentum thanks to ABio SA, and we can now sort of like see the path through to European market access. So you all, I'm sure, are familiar with Marula. These pictures just show the tree is a handsome tree or a beautiful tree, and it occurs in different landscapes. I think the one on the left is in Namibia, in a field. There's probably some mahangu growing on the sides there, it's a sight to behold in the fruit season in Namibia. I would suspect that the other one in the middle might be in Limpopo. That might be the Blauberg in the background, and the other one looks like a typical one from maybe the Bushbuck Ridge area in Mpumalanga. So I'm sure many of you are familiar with it. Many who've driven to the Kruger National Park in January or February will have seen the abundant Marula lying on the ground on the side of the road, and you may even have tried and tasted it. So it comes in different shapes and sizes. There's a huge body of traditional knowledge and know-how around Marula. Women know the properties of particular trees very well, and they use them for slightly different purposes. They make a slightly different drink for their personal and customary uses. This is knowledge that we need to tap into, because the products that we see now in the market are quite rough, I would say, because they collate Marula from very wide sources and mix them up. And I think there are some specialities within the different Marula. I've got a slide that will show some of that. This is just to illustrate that it's a very abundant fruit. It's an unusual fruit. It belongs to the family Anacardiaceae. That's the same as mango and avocado. And if you look at this, you can see the relationship with mango. So you've got quite a thick, tough outer skin, and you've got a small section of the juice, and you've got a very large pip, and you've got this very fibrous material that sticks to the pip. To get a good juice yield out of that is quite tricky. So it presents some processing problems, I think that's one of the focus that we need the science and technology community to look into. So I've hinted that it's abundant, and this is in Namibia. This is a scene that you'll see in February, March in the northern parts of Namibia. You'll see it in Limpopo, Zimbabwe, Botswana, Malawi, Angola, Mozambique. It's a giant resource, and it plays a very important cultural role in the communities where the trees grow. But I'll start now also with some of the issues that are what you can call challenges. So we know there's a lot of Marula, but how much is there? Right, so there are some processes underway. We have had in Zimbabwe, we had a good resource assessment of Marula by the Bioinnovation Zimbabwe, which is great. It shows industry, that the community are interested in knowing the supply capacity, the sustainability issues, etc. In Namibia, they did a great study in 2010 in the north central parts, and they found that there was a lot of marula, especially centered around where there's an association that's been in existence for like 25 years. The ABio SA project worked with SANBI to develop methodologies for resource assessments. And why is this important? If we think that there's a lot of marula and it grows in many countries, why is it important? Well, I think we have to think what happens if big industry becomes involved. Then what happens when you have in certain areas you have hail and there's damage, so you get losses. Animals consume the fruits, so you don't have all the biological biomass for industrial use. There are important cultural and socioeconomic uses that you do not want to disrupt. You can imagine that there's a lot of losses and spoilage in the manufacturing process and the logistics. And then I think there's going to become a new issue, because at the moment, most marula that is used is a collation of all the different varieties and land races and different types. And that's mixing sweet ones, sour ones, bitter ones, small ones, big ones. And what happens if somebody wants, I only want a certain variety of a certain type at a certain age in terms of the day, if it's day 1, day 2, day 3 of its level of ripeness. And then suddenly you might realize that to bring the very big users on board, you may have to convince them. So a very important thing that we have to do is to demonstrate and articulate the scale and scope of the resource, and where there might be issues, we have to put in place plans to address that. So the traditional uses, I'm not going to sit and go through the list of traditional uses. There's some amazing literature that's available, easily available on Google Scholar or on the web. And this is one that many might be familiar with, driving in Mpumalanga and Limpopo in northern KwaZulu-Natal, and all the other places in Southern Africa. That's the juice, and then there's also the beer. And the juice is typically watered, and the beer, it comes in different qualities, we can put it that way. If you're lucky enough to be invited to a household that has a tradition of making marula beer or wine, the quality is far superior than what you get at roadside sales. So there's some disuniformity in the uniformity in the quality of the products that's available on the roadside and in the informal markets. In the 1980s, there was some incredibly pioneering work done through to quite recently in Botswana by a pioneer called Frank Taylor. He developed a whole host of different products from marula, and he got them sold in Botswana and in South Africa. He even had some early traction in Europe and the United States. These brochures are available, so you can't really see much there, but you can. When you look at the brochures, you'll see he did some amazing stuff with jellies and purees and jams and stuff. But also he made like dried fruit levers that you're familiar with, that we make from apricots and peaches in Southern Africa. And he really was an incredible pioneer. And these have now developed into more sophisticated products. This is again an example from Botswana. Many of you know Yemi from Mwongo Craft, and these are really, really, really good products. And there's scope for more of these. These are the famous ones that many South Africans will be familiar with. And globally, Amarula, I think we're very lucky to have had Distel and now Heineken promoting Amarula so much, because it raises the awareness of consumers around the world about Marula. And I think that's an important opportunity for us to think about. These other two, these are famous brands in South Africa, and from time to time in the past, they've had Marula fruit products. But what you will notice here is that they are blends, and we need to understand why they are blends and not Marula on their own. It's a big subject. I haven't got to the bottom of that. Still need to have some dialogue with some of the stakeholders involved. But one thing is capacity. If you're going to make a pure Marula juice, there's the issue of scale and uniformity. And I suspect there are difficulties in getting the flavor of Marula at a certain large scale uniform. So yes, these are great, but I think they've had challenges, and we need to understand those challenges if we're going to develop this Marula sector. Here are some examples of more advanced type of products, which are typical in the new dietary supplement nutraceutical type market. These are from Israel. The Marula was also grown in Israel. They acquired Southern African Marula planting material in the 1980s. I'm in touch with the people. They had some very good science. This paper, Borochov and Niori in 2008, showed some very interesting clinical trials with humans. It was not a big trial, but it was a credible trial, and they have some interesting results, and they're using this in their products. They have it's protected by patents in South Africa, Israel, and the United States. I don't think all the claims were granted, but it's an important product range for us to be aware of. Just a little bit about science and technology and our research community. We have an abundant literature on Marula. Some of it is very easy to find on the internet. Thankfully, with new internet technologies and platforms and that, we can easily find the stuff. But there are some papers which are less easy to find, and we have a library of these. This one, yeah, you can find it, but it's very difficult. Unfortunately, we have some hard copies of the original books, and this paper here by Weinert, Van Wyk, and Holzhausen stands out as one of the excellent studies that was done some years ago. The science in this remains extremely valuable and relevant today. As I said, there are lots. We have a big library of these. Some of the studies are of very high quality, and there's some studies of lower quality. And we need to work with the research community to get the science to be sharper in some areas, and to respond more to what the commercialization needs are. There's still a little bit, not only in Southern Africa, but around the world, students doing studies on indigenous plants, and they have a tendency to find the cures for cancer, the cures for heart disease, the cure for AIDS, the cure for this. And the truth is that the healthy products are much closer to nutrition, general health and wellness, and the like, because we are not seeing these drug discoveries on indigenous plants convert to launched pharmaceutical products. So it's not that it's not important. We need those platforms, but what we're interested in here is products for consumption by people for general health and nutrition and well-being. We have access to a tool that we're busy developing. It's called Biomot. It's a biodiversity monitoring tool. It's an organization that it comes from an organization that's been scoping the biological diversity data from around the world and presenting it in very interesting visualized reports. I'm not going to go into the details. I just want to show that we've got a process underway, and we're refining this tool where you can basically search the scientific literature databases and the patent databases, and you can configure it to give you insights into trends, into particular parameters, like who's cooperating with who, what areas of study they're interested in, and what new products or new areas of science are being elucidated on a weekly, monthly, yearly basis. Just for interest, yeah, I want to show you this. Of course, you can't read that, it's too small, but what you can see here is this tool can show you a network. I think many people also know how to do this with other tools, but here's a research network for Marula. And what you can see is that people in the University of Johannesburg, Limpopo, KwaZulu-Natal, University Venda, Pretoria, etc., they work with each other and they work across our borders into other countries. So there's a good research network. But when you look at patents with this tool, you can see that they are discrete in their collaboration, which is to be expected because with patents, there's secrecy, confidentiality, etc. So yeah, you can very easily see these patents, and then you can see who's doing what with Marula, and it can give you insights into new opportunities, potential clients, and the like. We have a lot of work to do on defining what the products are that can come from Marula. This year is just in this very simple areas of juices and pulps and purees and the like. So there are some other illustrations that will show the what some of the issues are. But we need to define these for going forward because it's needed from a regulatory perspective, it's needed from a product labeling perspective, and it's needed from a technology development perspective. In South Africa, Marula juice is regulated by the Department of Agriculture from the Agricultural Products Standards Act 1990, and there are many subsequent amendments and sub-regulations, but they define what an unsweetened, a nectar, a squash, a drink, a flavored drink, a fresh juice, etc. are, and you have to stick to those. The other quality aspects like microbial contamination, other contaminants, etc., that's done by the Department of Health. And as you can see at the bottom, there's a minimum Brix, which is basically sugar, setting for Marula juice and puree, and for pulp it has to be 20% puree content and the like. This is typically something that probably I think so currently there's no specific regulation for Marula. It's in another general category, but I think going forward we may need to work with the regulator and define a proper standard or set of standards for the different type of products that can come from Marula. And yeah, I want to recognize the work that the South African Fruit Juice Association does, working with the Department of Agriculture, working with members to set and regulate and manage the compliance with standards. In the pictures below is just to show that Marula is a bit of an unusual fruit, a bit like mango. You've got a lot of the fruit flesh that sticks to this fibrous material on the seed. You've got a very prominent skin component, and the juice yield is relatively low. But I'll come to that. There's some interesting science about that coming up. And of course, the juices and the purees and the pulps is one set of products, but then there's the flavors and the fragrances and the extracts and some other more novel types of products that we have to think about, and we have to form the regulatory framework and standards for. So we've started the process of setting up the Marula Fruit Products Association. I want to draw your attention to the fact that the association is not established. It's a planned association, and there's a lot of work underway to understand the needs of the association, what it would need to do, and that's going to be informed by industry, researchers, funders, the regulators. And so we will form this association in a way where form follows function. We need to understand more fully the function so that we can set up the association appropriately. This is a very busy slide, but I just want to show you that there's a slide on the website. Sorry, that's from the website. So all this information, you don't have to sit and try and jot it down. It's available on the website, and you'll get a copy of this presentation. This is a very busy slide. I just wanted to show that there is a slide that talks about membership, and I want to highlight the points. The membership categories that are under discussion, and it's open to influence. Organized farmer and harvester groups, businesses, including the current and the future processors and manufacturers of Marula fruit products, and affiliates, including researchers. And of course, they will have different benefits and different fees which is typical in agricultural and in natural products associations around the world, including in South and Southern Africa. We are busy working with this on this. So this engagement, yeah, is part of the process, and I'll come later to how we hope to bring this to some decision-making points later. One aspect that's very important for the association, its purpose, its original function, and one of the main things it has to do is to be the food business operator that will make the notification to the European Commission for its application for novel foods. It will do the same for the United States in the next step, and it will do the same for other countries as well. And it will also seek to do a similar role in South and Southern Africa. The membership will be these processors, people who actually manufacture products. They will form this, the core part of the food business operator, and they will have access to all the unpublished literature and science that we've got, because we've been doing studies in preparation for the dossier for the last 3 years. And this is the purpose of that is to enable the industry then to make a successful notification for market access. This is just a little bit about the grey literature. So important studies were done in 2012, 2014 in Namibia, and some very interesting science was done looking at the fruit properties across a number of trees. We looked at the ripening phases when the sugar levels changed in day 1, day 2, day 3, all the way to day 7. And day 1, the fruit is green, and day 7, the fruit is brown and pretty much not usable. So we did a lot of studies, the rise in sugar, and then the drop, and the rise of acids and the drops, and the solid matter and the like. And we compared it with other fruits so that we could start the process of getting the science ready for when we start doing some commercialization. As I said, we've got a lot of unpublished science and data and information that is going to go into this notification or application for novel foods. There's also been work on a sector development plan, which is a very important aspect of supporting the development of the sector. We started the process in 2019. That's the image on the left. That's the report. All of these reports are available on the website and on the website of the ABio SA project. In 2021, there was a sector development plan for Marula. It had some focus on the fruit, especially with this market access part, but it was also a lot to do with the oil. The Marula Fruit Products Association is dealing with the fruit products for food and beverages, and not the oil from the stone for cosmetics. There you can join SAAFoST, or if you're Nancy, SAAFoST, or Nancy, one of these other associations, the Natural Products Association of Botswana, or the like. But there will need to be a specific elements of the sector development plan for Marula fruit because of all these challenges. I'll just quickly reiterate some of them if they've not been clear enough so far. The fruit perishes very quickly. So you've got a small window of opportunity to use the fruit. This, some people might say, is catastrophic, but I had a very interesting meeting with a really good research group at the University of Limpopo. It was Professor Mkhabo Moganedi, and she's doing a lot of interesting work on Marula wine, beer, and other beverages. And I was complaining about Marula's rapid perishing, and she said, yes, it is an issue, but it's the same with grapes. And it's just there. We've got thousands of years of people having worked out how to preserve it in bottles or in jars over very long periods of time. So we've got to pioneer this, and then systems will develop to deal with the characteristics of Marula fruit. We've just got to support and enable that process. A little bit about the novel food strategies. I'm not going to go into the weeds about the details of the novel foods regulation. There's lots of publications about this. It's on our website. But a couple of important things. We are still working out which route to approval is open. Ultimately, we are still pursuing this idea of a not novel. That's Article 4 in the regulation. Yeah, I just want to point out, so some of you are intrepid on the internet. You could stumble across or find a statement in what they call the Novel Foods Catalog that Marula fruit, or what they say are Marula berries, are not novel. However, the catalog is non-binding, and you are still obliged to approach the regulator. And when you approach the regulator, they will say, actually, the Marula berries are novel and the products from it are novel. So you have got this burden of dealing with it. We think there's still a chance that we can navigate our way through that, but realistically, we're looking at Article 10 and Article 14. So Article 10 is the full novel foods process. The advantages are, you can see them in green. You get 5 years of confidentiality, and you get a wider scope of the different types of products that you can present to them, especially modern or more up-to-date products for the new types of applications. But you do need more data. They often require animal testing. It's more costly. And there are some new regulations which are generally dubbed the EU transparency regulations. They're not particularly nice to deal with, but they're necessary. And this Article 10 requires a lot more of this compliance with transparency. Article 14 is this traditional food from a third country, which is supposed to be simpler in theory, and it's supposed to cost less. However, we've looked very deeply into it, and it has a number of problems, and it doesn't immediately solve the Marula problem. And one of the reasons is that it's more restrictive on the scope of the type of products that you can present. You can only really present to the European market and almost exactly the same product that's on the traditional market. So that will be difficult. It's not impossible, but it's difficult and it's quite restrictive, and you do not get a period of confidentiality protection. So this work is underway now with a very experienced specialized consultant, and we preparing the documentation to engage the regulators so that we can get their steer on these issues. Now, of course, everybody wants to know, well, what is the market for Marula fruit? And it's a very difficult question to answer because there are limited products on the market, and it's a product with potential and not with actual past track record. So it's very hard to measure. So what you can do, though, is you can look at equivalents or proxies. And in 2012, we had a deep look at two proxies, acai from South and Central America, and pomegranate, which grows in the Mediterranean areas and many other places, including South Africa. There was one standout brand that you find when you look at acai, and it's this one called Sambazon, and it has more than passing resemblance to the possibilities with Marula. Sustainably harvested in rainforest reserves, local value adding with communities and cooperatives, some claims which are not dissimilar to what's possible with Marula. And it was and I think it mostly remains wild harvested at the moment. This is very indicative. It had proper funding, so it could do good work. The 2002 to 2012 period, we identified 50 patents. Not all of them were very sophisticated or important ones, but there were a handful of very important ones. And in this period of time, there were 2,300 new products developed, which I think is interesting. More generally, not only this brand, but all the other brands and other companies involved with acai now. The market is between $1 and $3 billion US dollars. So it's pretty significant. I've been following this Sambazon brand because I have some connection with and knowledge of the people who made some of the investments into Sambazon. Well, they've grown very nicely, and $115 million US dollars of funding, private funding, and some public funding has been secured by this brand, and it is growing very fast, and they've got a very interesting range of products. And it's an interesting case for or people interested in the financing of biotrade and these indigenous products, of blended finance, because it was supported by development grants and then development finance institutions, and then private investors and venture capitalists took it and grew it to enormous size, of very important size. Pomegranate was another one. They focused on this heart health and cardiology aspects. And just this graph here, these graphs are all available, so please don't worry trying to read it. I'll just quickly give you the message there. You've got spoonable yogurt, pickled condiments, ready to drink iced tea, snacks, cereal, energy bars, etc. And in this period, 2002 to 2012, there were dozens and hundreds of products launched containing these ingredients. And that's because they had the right support, they had the right institutions, associations, the governments came to the party, and then private investors, banks, and venture capitalists came in and took it forward. I wanted to say a few things about developing inclusive value chains, and I think it's very important that we recognize that there is enough marula to get the commercialization going. There is a lot of marula. It doesn't have to wait until it's all domesticated in orchards or whatever. I think the idea here would be to start working with the existing harvesters and harvester groups and help them pilot and improve quality, improve their reliability, build on their capacities, local capacities, and support them to have industrial partnerships with users who want 100 kilos, 100 tons, whatever it is, 2 tons, and support them to go from groups that rely on the existing standing resource of marula, but then can navigate their way through to agroforestry and orchards and some small plantations and some bigger plantations. And so we build them into the value chains in the future. And one of the interesting things that you can do is you can provide support for some of these very, very interesting groups. The bottom left picture here is Professor Peter Bamidele at the University of Venda, who has an amazing facility for pilot processing of marula and other products. You can do a whole range of different things there. And these two other gentlemen are from the Vehembe community. This inspired them. And I think that in the next marula fruit season, they could work with this university, with some pilot facilities, and become very quickly an early collaborator in the value chains for marula. So, and the illustration on the top right is also from the University of Venda. And occasionally there's some very, very, very good science that comes from the universities. I did complain earlier that there's too much focus on curing cancer and the like. But yeah, it was a study. I'll just quickly describe it because I think it's interesting. Boiling the marula fruits, steaming the marula fruits, and fresh squeezing of the marula fruits. And they measured yield and was one of the parameters, but more interesting, they were measuring the vitamin C and the polyphenolic compounds. And with the boiled marula, it was less. In the fresh marula juice, it was okay, but it was less than the steamed marula. The steamed marula had higher vitamin C and higher polyphenol content. So I think that kind of knowledge and that top image there, if you could get into some selective harvesting, because there are different varieties out there. You've got very wild varieties, you've got some semi-selected varieties. And as I said earlier, with traditional knowledge, there's knowledge about the super sweet ones, the ones that make better beer, the ones that make better juice, the ones that are better just left for other animals to eat. If we can bring these things together in a nice support system, we can really develop some inclusive value chains and speed up the linkages between these communities, programs and harvester groups and farmer groups to join in the value chains of the future. On the website, you've got this presentation. This is purposely small. You don't have to read it. It's there and it's available. I just want to point out some important research possibilities that we need to take place on products that can actually be produced and presented to consumers or to industry. as I said, we can't. We're not going to find very easily the cure for cancer, but you can find products or components in Marula like dietary fiber and pectin. Why is that important? Well, pectins and have health claims. You can, if you've got a certain amount of pectin in the product, you can make a health claim about it. If you've got a certain amount of dietary fiber in it, you can make nutritional claims about it. Marula is extremely high in potassium. So it's a bit boring for researchers. Oh, this is potassium, this is like elementary. However, there are also health claims for potassium. And it's a very important component in health. And it's a very, very important nutrient for sports people, etc. So that starts to speak to modern trends of consumer demand, etc. And in the presentation, we draw attention to the fact that these compounds, other compounds not mentioned here, the traditional uses, some of the clinical trials that have already taken place, that it starts to point to supporting positioning for metabolic syndrome and those associated with health and wellness of the heart and the like, blood pressure, diabetes, etc. So I think there's a cause for a certain type of positioning, and we need to get that science right for the future of the sector. I want to just mention what the benefits and the lessons are that we can learn from the baobab sector. On the right-hand side, there's a document that was produced by ABio SA on the baobab industry's development, and it has a lot of relevance to Marula. And I just want to highlight the main lessons. There was an association that represented the producers. It had resources. It could deal with market access. It could deal with setting standards and quality. And it could deal with market development. It could go to trade shows. It could present it to the food and beverage industry around the world. And with the closing of Phytotrade Africa came the African Baobab Alliance, which continues that work in amazing work. So what we can learn is that you need to organize and collaborate, gain market access, develop the markets, focus on science to promote the product and set quality and other standards for the sector. And this year it's an example of baobab, but it touches on the new types of products that are interesting for our sector. And these are what you would call shots. So these are shots, a range of shots made with baobab as a base ingredient. But then it picks up on the trends like ginger, turmeric, and the super greens and the like. And I think there's an incredible scope in South Africa to introduce Marula to this type of innovative product. So what happens now? So I've made this presentation. I hope that it stimulates a conversation with some of you. And we are going to continue this industry engagement. With both industry and the researchers and with the regulatory people. We've got work going on with this regulatory expert. We're finishing off a study on the substances of concern that you might find in Marula. And we are preparing a draft dossier which will allow us to communicate in the right way with the different regulators. We are working on the sector development plan and we would like to think that we could be in the position to launch the association at the African Biotrade Festival. So I would really hope that some of you can make it there. It's the 18th to 20th of September in Johannesburg, Gauteng's Sandton Centre. You can see it there. We'd love to see you there. And we'll organise some meetings for the Marula Food Products Association there, and we'd love to see you there. In summary, Marula is an important underutilized fruit. I mean, we can see it all over the place. The communities complain that they haven't got customers, they haven't got markets, they haven't got a way of turning their resource into much needed cash. There are a lot of challenges. I've mentioned the rapid perishing. We need to understand more details about its actual capacity of supply, many other things, regulatory hurdles and the like. We can see solutions, partly by proxy and partly just by common sense, that you need to organize and address these food science and technology challenges. We're going to develop a sector development plan that speaks to all these solutions And this sector development plan is going to form the basis of a funding proposal. And we really hope that this entices SAAFoST members to bring their science and technology capabilities and interest to the Marula fruit sector. That's the presentation, and I thank you very much, and I'm really happy to take some questions.
Well, thank you very much, Cyril. I think that was quite a presentation, and I see that so much work has been done, but I mean, we had some discussions beforehand already. I'm sure that this will be of interest to many people. We've got quite a number of questions. I think maybe the best is if anyone has more questions that you post these also in the chat so we can deal with them from there. What I'll do is I'll read the questions out, and then I think I'll give you time to answer you or Christian as well. So Laura Diaz asked, how can we access the library? That was quite sort of early on in, well, about almost halfway through. I think you mentioned on your, that there's a lot of information available. I think on your website, I mean, the website is already up. You have already got some, but maybe you can say some more about information about Marula and all the research and everything.
Yes, so as I said, there's a large body of unpublished and grey literature. And the idea is to use that for the membership who are actually involved in the Marula fruit product manufacturing and trading. It builds the case for the dossier. The dossier is going to be owned by the core group of the food business operator. So this information, the confidential information, is for them. And we're just facilitating this process until there's a properly set up institution to take on that responsibility. But I'm happy to share the literature that's publicly available. I've got stuff that I'm sure is not easily findable on the internet. I've got an extensive database on Marula, and also this AI tool that I mentioned. We've got the first rendition, but it's going to be tweaked. And when that is ready, we'd love to share that with people so that they can see the depth of the science that's already there, and including the gaps where the science needs to go to help answer the questions of commercialization. I'm happy to answer that in a different way if that doesn't answer the question.
I think that's fine, because I mean, on the slides, which will be made available to everyone who registered for our membership, it will be on our membership portal available there. But I mean, we'll send it to all the other people who are non-members because they won't be able to access it there. But that's fine, because I think what people can do is they can actually just contact you directly if they are interested in this, because your email address is obviously on the last slide. Thank you very much for that. I know that you have done a lot of research, but are there any known allergens related to Marula? Do you know of anything?
So that's a very, very good question. And we are preparing this, what I would call a draft dossier. This regulatory consultant is an expert in preparing the documentation for successful notifications to the European Commission, the Food and Drug Administration, and the like. And unpacking the allergens is a very, very important part of that. So far, we do not find something that is not going to be manageable with the regulator. But that work continues, and the regulator may ask for something more specific. Increasingly, there's use of digital technologies to ascertain allergenicity and toxicity and the like. And the consultant that we're working with is also experienced in this. So you can, I mean, this is a long shot, but there's another thing that is a full genome of Marula. May also be able to help identify where allergenicity may be an issue and where it might not. This is still work in progress. But yes, we need to document all reports of allergenicity, and we have to contextualize that within the context of other food products that have also got allergens, and is this more or less, and does it represent a risk to the European, the South African, the Chinese, or the American consumer? So at the moment, only what you find in the published literature.
Thank you. The next question is from Astrid, and she wants to know how much sensory work has been done on the various forms of Marula, like, for instance, the fresh juice, I assume the fresh juice, or the juice pulp, the dried part, cooked or fermented, like you also mentioned there that you steamed it. That was quite interesting, actually. The University of Venda did that trial, I believe. Fermented parts, distilled versions, and then of the different varieties. I mean, I suppose that the different varieties play a big role, like you said, that some of them are sour and some of them are sweeter and so on. But has there been, can you sort of say a little bit more about the sensory characteristics?
That's another good question, presumably from your membership. Yes, there are some studies. They are dated. They're from the 1980s, 1990s. And they were not extensive, and they basically out of date in terms of product types and techniques. So this is one thing that we would really like to engage the science and technology community in. I would say that there's another couple of steps we just need to do first. We need to work a little bit more on defining the range of products that are feasible, are presentable, are enjoyable, and we need to narrow that down, and we need to get like a portfolio of small scale production so that we can get these products to the laboratories and the platforms who can do these sensory tests. I think it's a very important step ahead, and then that there has to be a feedback loop from that to the product development again, because I think sensory and taste hasn't always helped the fairly crude Marula pulp type products that have made it onto the market from time to time. So I think if we're going to get this right, we would need to work with these sensory specialists and get the product improved. Put it that way.
Thank you. Johan Wessels asks, is there a need for Marula oil filtration services? But I think, but you better answer that.
Well, filtration is always needed in most production processes. I think there are already some micro and ultra filtration systems out there for Marula oil. I'm not familiar with the exact brands and companies and that, but that's an established system. What might be more important going forward is filtration of Marula. There's a lot of solids, a lot of fibrous materials and the like. Centrifugation might become important. But another good question. We need to think about those things. And if Johan wants some connections, I can help introduce him to the Marula oil processing network, and he can see if they have a need.
Then Albert asks, are there producers or manufacturers in South Africa that can produce Marula pulp in consistent supply? I mean, this is the problem with the fact that the Marula season is a fairly short one, I suppose. But I mean, this is also obviously a valid question.
Yes. And that speaks to one of the main problems I was identifying, the challenges that we have. Well, the benchmark that we have at the moment is the Marula pulp that's produced for Distell Heineken in Palabora. Their concerns for sensory and that are naturally different because they're going to ferment it and then make a spirit out of it and then blend it into the amazing Amarula products. So that's a benchmark. We know that in Namibia, there's an innovative company that's got the ability to make tens or hundreds of tons of pulp a year. We haven't worked with them yet to check the day-to-day consistency, the week-to-week consistency, and the year-to-year consistency. But that's something that we will do. We're keen to work with that particular group. But that's exactly the issue we have. And what I would like to just go back to is these inclusive value chains that we were talking about, where for example, in Vihembe, there's a plan being discussed where they don't try and go from zero to hero, producing tons and tons of material, but to work with these farmer groups with some infrastructure, some capacity building training, some skills, and some access to pilot equipment, etc., and get them going from 0 to 500 kilos. And then look at the results, send the samples to the laboratories, different batches, different yields, different ways of producing. So you've got samples for the regulatory and evaluation purposes, and you've got samples for industry, looking for partners who would want to say, okay, what can you do next year? And then we can help them get finance to scale to 5 tons, 50 tons, etc. So that's the work we've got to do. And exactly that is going to be an important feature of the sector development plan.
Okay, thanks. Caroline asks, once novel foods approval is granted, can applicants then control who access the EU markets? You mentioned that in your,
Yes, to some extent, yes. And I mentioned those different articles, which represents the routes to approval. It's easier to do that with Article 10. Because in Article 10, you get 5 years of confidentiality, and you need all of that documentation to be able to have access to the market, and you have to be able to show that you're complying with those standards. And if you're outside of the network, you won't get it. So it will be that food business operator that will own the data and the information, and so they can control it by those means. And that's typically what happens. It happens with chemicals, with REACH registration, many other things. It's not unusual. But for the traditional food from a third country, it's somewhat more difficult because that's more akin to the USA Food and Drug Administration generally recognized as safe. So when they say generally recognized as safe, it means that those publications, those data have to be generally available, which means that people can copy it and then adapt it for their own dossier and then access the market themselves. So that's why I say that there's still a strategic decision to make about the routes to Article 10, Article 14. Sorry, I didn't mention Article 16. Article 14 is a traditional food from a third country notification. So you notify the authorities, and if they accept it, then you're notified and you're approved. But if they reject it, you have the option then to turn that into an application under Article 16, which then gives you the chance to answer the questions that they gave you. But so generally, yes, for about a 5-year period, you can get confidentiality, and the food business operator will be able to manage that process effectively of protection.
Now, not all that easy, hey. So Christian asked, does the novel foods dossier include all usable parts of the fruit? And does it cover supplements and cosmetics?
No. No, it doesn't. And that's kind of what I alluded to, that we have to, at some point in the very near future, we have to define the product. On a broad level, I'll put it this way. The regulator, whether it's in South Africa or China or in the European Union or anywhere else, the regulator wants you to have a narrow definition of what your product is. Okay, and the dossier must be narrow. So that you don't have loopholes and you can sort of like slip into different sectors and the like. So they like it tight and narrow. What industry wants, who are the producers, they want it wide because they want to innovate and bring new products that are not exactly the same as the other ones, and the like. So you've got to strike a balance between satisfying the regulator and meeting the requirements of industry that wants it wide and to be open to more innovation. What we are doing is we're preparing the documentation, the substances of concern, the analyses on the whole fruit puree, which includes the skin, the juice, the fibrous material connected to the pip. So it's everything except the stone. So we're not involved with the stone, the seed, and the kernel and the oil. Just the fruit part, the exocarp, the mesocarp. We're doing the studies on the whole fruit with all the components. What we're hoping for is that we can present that to the regulator, and that in the same dossier, you can make a juice, a pulp, a puree, a jam, a chutney, an achar, and so this is a long stretch, and a flavor extract, an essential oil. So it's covered by one dossier. But we have to negotiate that with the regulator, and it depends on the scientific results and risk management and stuff. So the answer is no, but we're working on it. And if you join, you can be part of the discussion, and you can influence the decision-making process in that way.
That's quite interesting, because I mean, in the end, one needs to also work out what are you going to do with the byproducts, which will be in that case the stone and everything that's, or the yeah. But yeah, I mean, that's the way it is, I suppose.
Ingrid, there is one other aspect to that. What has happened with other novel foods in the past is you get a base novel food dossier, which makes it, so let's say it's for the whole puree. And the regulator is not happy that you make then a flavor extract from it, okay, and under the same dossier. But you put the first dossier down, and another subset of the sector works on the flavor extracts, and they base their dossier on the first dossier, and they add the additional information in the second dossier. So you can have like a family of dossiers. So it helps a lot, but it doesn't do all of the work. You still have to do something that's specialized around your product type.
Okay, that's also good to know, hey? Christian also wanted to know whether, the novel foods dossier, does it cover for supplements and cosmetic application, I assume?
No, it won't cover cosmetics. That's out. Supplements is a slightly different thing. In one case you can, but it's eventually it's around what claims you're making. If you're going to make some form of a claim, and if you're moving away from a food product towards a dietary or a nutritional supplement, additional regulations come in. So when you do these kind of products like Baobab and what we're planning to do here, it's a very it's an art rather than a science of how you position your positioning to not fall afoul of the regulations, but to make the most of the science that you've got to promote your product. So a short answer is you could probably make a food supplement on the basis of the novel food dossier, but you're going to be limited in what you can claim. And if you want to make a very specific food supplement or a dietary supplement claim, you may have to do additional work.
Yeah, and I think that's quite a lot of work to be done.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so Rudy wanted to know what is the pH range of the fruit. I assume that it depends totally on the different species of Marula that you get.
So was that the range? I missed that.
pH, yeah. Well, I suppose the pH range, or the
I would have to look that up, and I'm happy to send that data. If you ask me a question by email or WhatsApp, I'll try and find those data, because in those Namibian studies we did do that. I just can't remember it offhand.
Christian Malherbe actually answered that it's around 4 to 5.
Okay, that sounds right.
That's the range. Yeah.
Yeah.
Jonathan also shared the the website. So that's very kind.
Mm.
Then we have Priscilla, who asked, what's your advice to governments with few regulatory and beneficiation policies and guidelines like Botswana? That's
Right,
difficult.
and that's a part that I've left out of this presentation, which is something that the Marula Fruit Products Association will have to deal with, and that is this access and benefit sharing regulations in South Africa, in Botswana, and Namibia, everywhere in the world where they signed up to the CBD and to the Nagoya Protocol. I think we have a good relationship with the departments. In advice to Botswana, I'll happily give that offline bilaterally. It really depends on what the exact question is for which part of beneficiation or whatever. But I'm not short of ideas. I just need more precision in the question.
Yeah, that's understandable. Okay. Petra asked, what are the permit requirements for all the parts of the tree to be used for the novel food industry? Sure. I mean, that's quite huge. I mean, who's done any work on the whole tree?
Yeah. I mean, the whole of the Marula tree is a pharmacy for years for people who've lived with the Marula resource for centuries, even thousands of years. Our focus is on the fruit for a number of reasons. You've got to have focus. There's a lot of possibilities from the root bark, from the leaves. There's so much that you can do. But I mean, from a personal perspective, I'm interested in the fruit from a sustainability perspective. That you're not getting involved in sort of bark stripping and root digging and taking off leaves en masse of trees. So that's one thing. Marula is protected in South Africa. Marula is often culturally or traditionally protected in many areas, where you need permission from the traditional authorities to use a tree in a certain way, to cut it, who has access to it. The rules are the bylaws are different in different countries. So it really depends, but we are not getting involved in the bark, the roots, the leaves, not even the oil. We really are focused on supporting market access for the Marula fruit and developing the Marula fruit sector. There's enough on the plate there.
Well, that was very clear from your presentation. I mean, all the things that you have done already now, and it's not even finished yet. But yeah, well, I think those are all the questions. I want to just say thank you so much, Cyril, for doing all this work and getting the presentation ready and you know, presenting it to us and to many others who also joined us. We really appreciate it. I think it's important that we know what's happening in South Africa and yeah, beyond our borders as well, because I mean, all of this work wasn't only done here. But thank you so much for everything. And we will be in touch, I'm sure. So just to remind everyone, we will actually make sure that you can have the slides and that you will get the information that you requested.
We will indeed do that. And Ingrid, thank you to you and your team very, very much for facilitating, including those last minute ones that you did manage to squeeze into the webinar.
Yeah, okay. It looks like not everyone even joined, but I know what it's like when you in a work environment, you intend to do lots of things, but all of those who registered will have access to the slides.
Great.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, thank you very much again, and thanks for everyone who joined.
Thank you, everybody.
And wishing you all a very nice day. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
been because when I had to allow people back in, yeah, it ran all time. So I've ended the meeting. I'll